Welcome to Root Cellar, an inquisitive look into sustainable food preservation and ancient wisdom for the modern world. Hi folks, today in the show we're going to cover all things sourdough bread. So you may be sick of sourdough. I know it was kind of a staple during the pandemic and it was a lot of people's, intro to fermentation. It's not the easiest thing for me, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not great at following rules and I'm not good at measuring. I'm good at kind of going on my own intuition, if you will, and being creative. And sourdough has less room for that than I find some other fermentations like hot sauce, for example. So today we're gonna follow a somewhat inexperienced sourdough baker, and she's gonna walk us through baking a loaf and point out some of the early pitfalls that she experienced. And then we're gonna pivot and interview a really experienced sourdough baker, one of the best I've ever seen, someone who's been at it for a long time, and he's gonna just walk us through some of his trials and tribulations in the process. So a little bit of a two-part episode today. Stick with us. This one's a little bit more conversational, but I think there's a lot of good info in here, and you'll get to hear from an expert, and hopefully you're inspired to try sourdough or try another type of bread, or maybe we expose you to some other type of fermentation that you're unaware of for you seasoned vets out there.
Hey everybody, we're going to show you how to get a sourdough starter kicked off. Probably the most important thing that you need while doing a sourdough starter is a scale. Sourdough is easy once you get a hang of it, but initially ensuring you get ratios proper, it's best if you have a digital scale so that you do things exactly. So to create a starter, we are going to add equal parts of flour to water. So over here I've got my flour, and I'm going to add 4 ounces of flour. Make sure you add slowly so as to not go over. At least with the flour, it's easy. You can take some out if need be. Lots of people use jars or different vessels. I use this bowl. I find it easier as I, speed my starter over the next week or so, which is what we will be doing. All right, we're almost there. So, and we are at 4.1, so let's just take a tiny little bit out and a tiny little bit more. There we go, 4 ounces, beautiful. So now that we've got our 4 ounces of flour, we're gonna reset our digital scale and we're going to add our water. So let's add it pretty slowly, because as you see, we will get up to that 4 ounces pretty quickly, and it is a lot more difficult to remove some of the water than it is the flour. So just kind of trickle it in, especially as we near that 4 ounce mark. Perfect, and there we go. So as you can see, we have equal parts flour, equal parts water. Now, all you need to do is mix this together. Give it a really good mix. And then we are going to get, I'm going to use a clean dishcloth, clean kitchen cloth, and we are going to cover this, and we will be coming back tomorrow to feed our sourdough starter again. So what starts to happen is fermentation will begin, and instead of using your traditional yeast, as we feed this and let it ferment over the week, we get some really beautiful naturally occurring yeast. So let's cover it. Got a clean cloth. And just set it somewhere where it's out of the way, not gonna get too hot, not gonna get too cold, and we'll come back tomorrow. All right, guys, fast forward, it is day 8, and look at the beautiful bubbles in our starter. It is super active, which means it's time to bake a loaf. This is my favorite recipe. All right, guys, this is the fun part. It's digging out our freshly baked bread. So we'll shut off the oven. This is gonna be really hot. All right, take it out. Oh, it's perfect. Look at this beauty. Okay, this loaf is going to be incredibly hot and really tempting to want to cut into, but we need to let it sit for at least an hour. All right, guys, it's been an hour. It was the longest hour of my life waiting for this beautiful thing. Let's cut it open and let's see what kind of bubbles we got. Oh, it's got a really good outside crust. You're really trying to achieve that good crust on the outside and fluffy, beautiful bubbles on the inside. That's a pretty good first loaf, and you will find that the more you feed your starter and the older your starter gets, the better this gets, and the more bubbles you get, and the more light and airy it is. All right, now get some butter and enjoy.
All right. Now we are going to go have an interview with Dylan S. Keating. Dylan is a Alberta-born, now Montreal-based fermenter. He does really cool creative stuff, and his bread has just been leveling up over the years, and he's really dialed it in. He does some really cool combinations, and we'll try to include some photos of his loaves as well. But you'll see a conversation that we had that was a little bit more high level about fermenting bread and sourdough, and how to kind of take it to the next level and what to watch for when you're starting out. So here is, and without further ado, here's an interview with my pal, Dylan S. Keating, all the way in Montreal. Cheers. Dylan, I'll just get you to start by introducing yourself.
Hey, my name's Dylan Keating, former Albertan based in Montreal now.
Awesome. And you are somewhat experienced, have been fermenting for a number of years now, and I noticed that sourdough was that the gateway to fermentation?
Yeah, I'd say sourdough was the gateway. Really, like everyone else during COVID, I got pretty obsessed with fermentation. Really went down the rabbit hole. I still do still ferment like lots of vegetables. I like to make sodas and drinks. But bread has kind of been the cornerstone, still making tons of bread. And yeah, it's kind of my little weekly tradition.
So Dylan, for someone that might be somewhat new to fermentation and might be going about their first batch of sourdough, baking their first loaf, what are some of the hurdles or pitfalls that you experienced or that might be common for a beginner that you could point out?
Yeah, I'd say one thing is there's a lot of information, especially if you're on the internet. It can be hard to sift through everything. There's a lot of people have different opinions about, whether you need to use a starter that's been around for 100 years, the kind of magical combinations of ingredients. And one thing I can say, it's actually a lot easier than you think. You can start a starter with just some flour and water and time. The key ingredient is time, as well as following the rhythms of the starter and the bread. Yeah, I would say one key thing is to learn how to read the rhythms of the starter, as well as the different steps of the bread. So it's really a sensorial thing. There's different uh, senses that we need to use. So for instance, when we're working with the dough, we need to consider the texture. So with experience, it's possible to learn how to read sort of the texture of the dough, as well as using your nose to smell when the starter is ready to use, or when the bread is ready to be manipulated or shaped, as well as when the bread is ready to bake.
Very cool. So I noticed, I've known you for a long time, and I could kind of see kind of your bread go from beginner experimentation to getting some really visually appeasing and appetizing looking breads, just based on your social media and what you showed me in person. What changed? What was that point like when you went from a beginner to your stuff look like it could be displayed at a French bakery?
Thanks, that's nice. I had two key resources that helped me, and they were books. One was called the Tartan Bread Book by Chad Robertson, and the other one was called Flour, Salt, Water, and Yeast. Both of these books were super inspiring. They had really great illustrations, and it just helped to cut down the noise a little bit, compared to all the information I was seeing on the internet.
Cool. One of the challenges I found personally with sourdough, and I love making bread as a whole, but one of the things, yeah, that was extra difficult for me was with a lot of fermentation, there's so much wiggle room, and I can change the recipe on a whim and experiment, and it'll work out. Usually, I'll notice some recipes will be better than others, or some strategies, but with sourdough, there is some weighing involved. Do you use a scale? Are you able to just do things by hand and by memory, or are you rigorous with the scale?
Yeah, absolutely. The scale was game changing for me. So initially I started by using volume measurements, like cups and tablespoons. And that's a common thing people do. And it's okay, but for sourdough, it really helps to have precision, especially once you start baking a lot, you start experimenting. And another thing too that can affect things is temperature. So I live in an old apartment in Montreal. The temperature fluctuates a lot in here. So I notice if I haven't baked for a while and the temperature has changed, different steps will take longer. And so it helps having the scale, because that's one variable that you can keep constant in your recipes.
Now you mentioned kind of, temperature and humidity and these other outside factors that can affect your sourdough. Did you notice a difference going from the Alberta climate to Quebec?
Yeah, I would say I've done most of my baking in Montreal, but I definitely noticed a difference in terms of the time the different steps would take, as well as how much water the flour would absorb. Those are different things that I noticed when I moved here.
And I imagine if you were, in coastal BC or Halifax, that humidity level would change things
Totally.
even more.
Totally.
And what about finishing? I noticed that some of you're starting to experiment with additional ingredients. I've seen you start to use cheese and jalapenos and different vegetables. Any magical kind of go-to combinations that you found?
Lately, I've really been enjoying nut breads. So throwing a handful of almonds or walnuts in at the end gives a really nice flavor and a really nice color too. Walnuts give a little bit of a purple tint to your dough, and it's really impressive and really tasty when you take a slice and you toast it and butter it, and it tastes great with cheese as well.
Cool. Was there anything that you'd avoid? Any ingredients that are challenging or don't work?
I tried making brioche, and that was a bit trickier with sourdough. But I would say the sky's the limit. I think you can experiment with anything that you could think would taste good. One thing I want to try is bacon bread. I found a really nice recipe for that, as well as incorporating potatoes into bread.
And can you just elaborate on that a little bit? The potato and bread?
Yeah, there's a really great bakery just down the street from me that does a nice potato cheddar loaf, and I want to try to emulate it. I think when I try it, I would boil the potatoes first before adding them into the bread, just because they won't cook in time if you add them raw into the bread. But fermented potatoes on their own, just as a side note, are really good too. I've been making fermented potatoes into French fries. They get a nice, like almost salt and vinegar taste. So I'd like to meld those two flavors, the fermented potatoes with just a nice sourdough flavor. I think it would go really well together.
And just for my own personal interest, can you just quickly talk about? This is the first I've heard about fermenting potatoes. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, there's a restaurant and bar downtown in Montreal that kind of specializes in fermentation. That's where I first tried these fermented fries, and they're pretty simple. Basically, you cut your potatoes into a fry shape, and then you ferment them in a saltwater brine. So you take use about a 2 or 3% salt per water concentration, and you just let the potatoes ferment for about a week, and then you either deep fry them or you can even bake them, and they're good as well. They have a really nice bubble, and they get really crispy on the outside. So they're great with mayo, great with ketchup.
Do you leave the skins on? I'm assuming.
I like them skins on. Yeah,
Cool. I'm
but it's
trying
not
that.
it's not necessary.
I'm gonna try that next week. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's really good.
And one final question, Dylan. As far as presentation goes, do you use a razor blade to kind of score the sourdough? What's your strategy with that?
I kind of go based on how I feel. I haven't quite mastered the different designs. I've seen a lot of cool stuff on YouTube. Uh, so sometimes it's nice to just do like a single straight razor cut or a couple of cuts. But sometimes I like just the rustic look you get from the bread opening up on its own. So it's the step. It's not an. I wouldn't say it's a completely necessary step. So it's kind of up to the baker's preference.